Hello again. We're going to start our second set in this series talking about the Dinosaur Delusion and dealing with some evidences that have been found but scientists overlook or choose to ignore. First thing we started off with was the question was, did dinosaurs and mankind coexist? You answer this question, you answer the thought of, is evolution correct, or is God's account of creation in Genesis correct? Now, in evolutionists' own words that we're going to look at again in just a second, there's some statements they make that essentially say, if you can find evidence that shows dinosaurs and man coexisted, evolution can't be true. But there's some of these evidences that they agree that if they're true, disproves evolution. They say they're false, they say they're faked, or they totally turn a blind eye to. Now again, looking at some of these statements that they made, Richard Dawkins of Oxford University, very prominent evolutionist, makes the statement, we should be very surprised, for example, to find fossil humans appearing in the record before mammals are supposed to have evolved. Or essentially, if we find human evidence before they're supposed to have evolved, along with dinosaurs, then evolution is destroyed. Stephen M. Stanley, John Hopkins, any topsy-turvy sequence of fossils would force us to rethink our theory. Again, any misplaced fossils that don't fall in their assigned order of evolution disproves the whole thing. The Nova TV series, dinosaur footprints side by side with humans, counters everything. Louis Jacobs, former president of the Social Society of Vertebrate and Paleontology, any such association would dispel Earth with vast antiquity. You find man and dinosaurs together, evolution is disproved. That's what all of these people are saying. The evidence has been found, but they just choose to ignore it. Again, they turned a blind eye toward it. The first one we looked at last week was the Taylor Trail. Again, 14 succinct, well, I can't say this word, 14 footprints right along with each other with a dinosaur-like footprint crossing it, 134 of those, found, observed 1972. You have the picture there of the up close, even with the footprints on top of one another. We had last week again the Delvis Elvis Delk track, which is found, I think, a mile and a half from same track that just was listed before. This one with the human footprint underneath the dinosaur footprint, and the X-ray cutaway showing that they weren't faked. You see the pressure, the dark zones there showing that pressure was made, that the contouring of it shows that it wasn't chiseled out after the fact. So last week we had those two given to us. We're going to look at two more sets of proofs this week. First one is the dinosaur figurines of Cambodia, Mexico. There's some amazing evidence there that dinosaurs and man coexisted. They're found at this Waldemar Arad museum. That's where they're kept. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you, if you look this up, you're going to find a lot of headlines that say fake archaeology, fake figurines made, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit in a moment. They were found by this man, Waldemar Arad, who was a well-educated German in the early 1800s. He utilized his archaeological training in Mexico and was acknowledged to be the co-discoverer of the Chupacaro culture. This is where these figurines were found, or the group of people that made them. They date from 800 BC to 200 AD, so think about how long ago that was. He also wrote a book, The Enigmas of Del Pasado, which is essentially the questions or the mysteries of this certain place, describing his excavation and collection of 3,700 ceramic figurines that were found among the acknowledged Chupacaro pieces. At least 2,600 of these figurines appear to be dinosaurs or dinosaur-like. All right, so here's a picture of some of these figurines that were found, okay? You can see some of them are fanciful, some of them have characteristics that look dinosaur-like, bewildering variety of them. Some of them, again, they have characteristics that look like dinosaurs that were found. Now, again, some people will say, well, these people just made them. Some even said that the fellow that found them commissioned them to be made. He asked the people that were there to fashion them themselves. But there were parts of these potteries or part of these figurines that were dated that showed them to be from the time period that he found them. That was thrown out once it was known they were dinosaur-like in nature. Now, I want you to notice some of these specific figurines that are made, okay? Some of them look like what we call apatosauruses or brontosauruses, long-necked dinosaurs. And you notice the circles that are there. They show spikes coming off the back. The unique thing about that is, remember, he found these in early 1800s, somewhere from, I think it was 1815 to 1830, somewhere in that time frame. But notice the spikes, the things coming off the back of the sauropods. Here is where they were found. You notice Mexico City right there at the bottom. You see the outline of the bottom of Texas there at the top. So it's a little bit east and north of Mexico City is this region where they were found. Again, if you want to look up more information about them. All right, here's another one that you notice. You see it's longer neck, a very long tail, but you'll also notice that spine that's running on top of the back and on top of the tail. Okay, here's what's important about that. These collections, not 1800s, 1900s, were discovered in the mid-1900s, okay? The spikes on these sauropods were not really known to exist until around 1992. You notice the skeletal outline at the bottom. It shows a long-necked dinosaur, but it has the spikes on the back. Those weren't even known to have existed until 1992. Now look at the figurine that's listed, that's shown above. You have the very clear image, something that's understandable to see, a long-necked dinosaur, brachiosaur, apatosaur, some kind of sauropod. And it has the spikes. So 1950s, these were found and they have the spikes on the back. Now, how in the world or why in the world would they have put these spikes on the back if they wanted to trick the guy that was finding them to think they were dinosaurs, to think that he had found something unique or special? If that was the case, they would have done away with that. They would have made it however he wanted them or thought these dinosaurs were supposed to look. In 1992, they found, I believe it was in Russia, a fossil impression of a long-necked dinosaur that actually had the spikes shown in the fossil that was found. The unique thing about this is these spikes, they're not bone, they're cartilage or skin, so they decayed, they rot away. You can't tell that they're there. So here we have, again, an example of a dinosaur-like figure with appendages on its back, spikes on its back, that weren't even known to have been part of a dinosaur or even existed on that kind of dinosaur until about 50 years after they were found. Now again, people are going to say that they're fake, but the evidence seems to show or seems to lean toward the idea these people were drawing something or fashioning something either they'd seen with their own eyes or that ancestors explained to them and showed how they looked. Here's the nail in the coffin for this argument against these being truthful. The logical explanation as to how these Dinosaur figures possessed accurate dinosaur anatomy that was unknown until 1992 is simply that the ancient artist, again, remember, these figures are dated back from 800 BC to around 200 AD, so 2,000 years ago. The reason they had them is the people who fashioned the figurines, again, either saw them, interacted with the animals themselves, or they were explained to them and described to them by people who had seen them or past generations who had witnessed them themselves. Again, most of the evidence or most of the information you're going to find on this says that it's false or fake archaeology. But again, they were carbon dated to be from that time frame. They had the accurate anatomy, not known till 50 years later. So it seems to be that they fit with what our scientists said before. Any topsy-turvy or out-of-place information would destroy their theory. The next thing we're going to look at is actually something I've been able to witness myself. I went on a mission trip to Cambodia a few years ago, and I was actually blessed to be able to go to this temple and see it. So these pictures that you're going to see, they're not taken by me, but they're pictures of a place that does exist. I've been able to touch it. I've been able to see it with my own eyes. There are thousands upon thousands of these temples in Cambodia. And what they did is the people who built them would carve out these very elaborate pictures of all of the animals, all of the fish, everything that they saw, what the people were doing, and that's how they decorated their temples, okay? So the picture that's on your left is kind of a big backed up picture to show where this image is that we're going to see. The one on the right shows it's kind of tucked away in a corner. All right. We have, it's a column where you have on one side, you have a list or pictures of all these different animals. The other side, you have pictures of animals as well. There's even some humans that are shown to be doing some pottery or weaving in one of them. But you notice the top left one here is clearly a monkey or maybe a baboon, something like that. The top right one, some kind of deer or antelope. The bottom left one seems to be some kind of cow or ox, some big four-legged animal with horns. The bottom right one seems to be some sort of crane or bird. So animals that we've seen before, animals that they saw themselves. And then you look here in this column, so this same column, I think above it is the crane or the baboon, but you notice that on both sides going up and down are different animals, okay? And the big arrow there is pointing to the one that we see on the right. Now, if you look at the right, it seems to be some kind of four-legged animal that has a very long tail, that has an odd-shaped, square-shaped head, and that it seems to have some kind of horns or plates coming off its back. Now, just before we look at the picture up close, I want you to notice here's how this thing is put into place. They were done in individual blocks and then set on top and then anchored toward one another. What's on the right shows the anchor there. They would put a piece of rock or metal that would hold them to each other. So there's no way this could be tampered with, no way they could have replaced it, pulled it out, and put a different one in. It's the same wear patterns that are around it. It fits in exactly with the temple that's there. Now let's look up close. Here's the picture, an up-close picture. Again, you see a four-legged animal, something that has a long tail. If you get up close, if you're able to look up real close to the picture, you'll notice the head has, it looks like a flare around it or some kind of horn coming off of it. Then you notice the humps on the back. Now, on the right, you'll see a little kid's toy stegosaurus. Now, just asking you to compare the two, what do they look like? And then below the picture of the toy, you have kids' drawings of a dinosaur, Stegosaurus. And again, they look extremely similar. Now, some have tried to say it's, again, a fake hoax. Somebody put it in later. The images I showed you before were to show that that's not possible. Some have said, well, it's not really what it looks like. It's something else entirely. But again, you look at this compared with the kid's toy with the kid's drawings, and it looks eerily familiar. It looks almost identical to what's given there. Again, we go back to what our scientists have said. If there's any topsy-turvy thing, if there's anything that's out of place, we have to accept that the theory we come up with is wrong, and it looks like we have our proof there. Now, again, there was that other picture. Sorry. Going back to our pictures here, you have these pictures of these different animals that were known to exist. There are other temples that have these exact same things that are there. So why would we have this one thing out of place? Or why would this one thing be listed that its faults are fake, but the rest of them we accept are true? You have to look at the evidence, accept it for what it is, see it for what it is. Now, the question goes back, which are we going to believe? We have God's account of what happened, of creation, of what occurred. We have man's account of what they've come up with, what they've decided is how things came into being. We have evidences that we've looked at that seem to disprove what scientists say. We have the scientists' words themselves, again, going to what they've said. You know, our whole modern theory of evolution would be utterly destroyed if something has come to light. Any topsy-turvy sequence of fossils would force us to rethink. All right, the very bottom here, or very top here, dinosaur footprints side by side with humans, finding them would counter evidence that humans evolved long after. On the right, on the right, such an association would spell Earth with vast antiquity. Evolution would be vanquished. So here again are four evidences that back up, that prove creation's account of it. But I'm sure you haven't heard of these, or if you have heard of them, again, it's under the heading of fake or false or some kind of conspiracy theory type thing. I simply want to get this evidence out there, and I'm not saying that there's not going to be some people that fake evidence or fake fossils. I'm sure those are out there as well. But with all of these that are adding up, and we've got probably 2 or 3 more episodes worth of this, of just evidence that I've been able to compile, that I've gotten from, again, Apologetics Press's book on the Dinosaur Delusion, along with some other stuff that we're going to look at, that we have to come away with the understanding that God's account is correct, that these scientists, these evolutionists, they're choosing to turn a blind eye or even fabricating their own evidence to prove their theory. That's going to be one of the things that we look at, is how many fake, how many fabricated evidences that evolutionists have come up with to support their theory as well. Again, I hope that this has helped you. Again, if you have any other questions or thoughts or even corrections on things that I've done, I don't claim to be right in all of this. I'm just going off the best evidences and the best things that I can come across. So if you would, email me, call me, whatever you need to do. I just hope this has helped you in some way. You have a good day.